We're gonna. Hi, Holly. That
Hi,
wasn't
Holly.
very long. Good job.
We don't have the music, huh? I think that's what
No,
the
I figured just leave it
Yeah,
out.
no, I was wondering because I was like, am I tripping? It's quiet. That's why. No,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that makes sense. It's fine. But I was just wondering because I was like, something's different. It's quiet.
that's why. How are you, Holly?
It's amazing what 3 sessions with that on could make me feel like, oh, why is it different? It's been this way the whole fucking time, girl.
I know. We've been messing around with StreamYard and you can play background music. So we've had some background music the last few days.
Oh, my comments are coming up twice. Hold on.
I was just gonna say, hey, I noticed that, but that's you. Cool.
Yeah, that's
because
me.
it's commenting from YouTube and Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So it won't show up on YouTube or Facebook as both
I was
of
gonna
them.
say it's not showing up on
Okay.
Facebook for me.
Okay.
I don't see it on Facebook, but I do see it in StreamYard.
Okay. Yeah, you'd have to be looking at my business page. That's where I'm streaming it to. That's one of the places I'm streaming it to, or my YouTube page to see it.
Okay, I need to follow your business.
Yeah, because
page.
it's showing you as John, and then it's showing you as Astro Tarot Johns.
Yep.
That's cool. I like that.
Hi, Heather. Heather had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday,
happy
Heather.
birthday.
She wasn't on live yesterday, so.
That would have been a nice little birthday treat for you. The baby was on. And she was giving out smiles.
She was.
Girl, you missed it. But technically, if you watch the replay, it still counts. It's your birthday. Happy birthday.
Yep.
Okay. Please like and share, you guys. We would love and appreciate that.
I know I would.
She is. Oh my gosh. She's starting to get vocal and make all these little cooing sounds now. 2, 3, 4. Okay, you guys. So let's get started. I got a couple cards for us. But first, yes, please like and share. We would love and appreciate that. I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for joining us. And now we'll start with the readings. We have peace and love, you guys. Tonight is our first card. Sorry. I bring peace to the world. You guys, we were talking about that yesterday about being a peaceful warrior. So peace is still coming up in our energy right now. So use your, immediate gifts that you have. Don't, think about having to use money or things. What can you offer? Your time, your energy, your love, whatever it may be. Peace and love. Start tapping into that energy, you guys. That's what we're trying to bring in right now. Weighed down. All that I need comes to be. So, stop stressing about shit. Stop worrying about, things that might not be happening right now as you want them to. Get out of lack mindset, out of fear. It's coming to you. I promise, divine timing. So it's coming to you. Don't worry about, like I said, being in lack mindset. It's on its way. We have fertile foundation. Joy sprouts within me, you guys. We've been talking about being cracked wide open, whether it be a rose or you be a seed and you are, ready to grow and to bloom. So get ready, you guys, to just tap into that fertile energy. We're having tower moments that are happening all over the place. So as these tower moments are happening, fertile foundation is starting to come into play, you guys. All the things that are not serving you and that are not aligning with you are leaving you so that you can build this strong, fertile foundation that is going to be sturdier than ever, because, all the things that are not for you anymore are gone, and everything that is meant for you, everything that is, keeping you way down, all that you need is coming to you. So get ready. Self-care comes in the last card for us. And I look after myself, my body, my mind, and my soul. We have to start taking time for ourselves. You need to rest. You need to, replenish that energy. Your energy is your most important and valuable part of you. This is, what we're calling back every single day and night. It's ours. It belongs to us. Stand in your fucking power. Call your energy back. That is self-care. Protect your fucking energy. That is the most high vibrational thing you can do. Protect your fucking energy, okay? But take time for yourself. If you're feeling tired, if you're feeling weighed down, if you're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, whatever it may be, rest, ground yourself, let go of what's not serving you, go into nature, whatever it may be. Indulge in something that's going to bring you happy, something that's going to just make you feel good about yourself. But self-care is important. Make sure you're taking care of yourself because you fucking matter. Call that energy back every day and night. I love you guys. Rebel's turn.
Dang, girl, that was quick. And great.
Sorry. I know John's here and I've been waiting for so fucking long to learn astrology. And you guys already know about the broad that blocked me. So I'm like, teach me. I need to know. And now that I have a new baby, I'm just like, I really want to know so much more, because as she's growing, I'm just like, and Cara sent me her birth chart when she was first born. So I'm just like, I didn't even have to search for it. So I'm just excited to learn all these things.
Us too. We're all excited. So let me get this out of the way and we'll get to it. All right, guys. It's dark and you can't see a fucking thing. Get your head out of your ass pronto. Setting the stage here. All right. Then we have the Awakening card, energetic upgrades, a new way of being and integration. With all of the tower moments that have been happening for everyone lately, you are awakening to new versions of yourself. You are integrating the shadows or past versions of you or past experiences, and you are getting ready to cross a new threshold of energy. So you're kind of tying up loose ends. The tower is taking away all the things that don't serve you in your path anymore, and you're moving forward in a big way. Yes is next. Just say yes. You have opportunities coming in. Say yes to these opportunities. Don't be afraid. Don't be, like Angela said, in the lack mindset or focused on negativity or worrying about something's going to come rain on your parade or come in, the other shoe's going to drop whenever something good is about to happen for you. It's not going to. You've already done the work. You've gotten rid of those things. This is just residual energy that you're meant to move through, and keep your eyes on the prize. Believe what you see. Face reality or live in fucking la la land. Choose bravely. So as you're crossing this threshold of energy, as you are releasing what no longer belongs here and being open to what's coming in, you may, like I said, not believe what is happening for you is meant for you, or you might still have that residual energy like, oh, I thought I had an opportunity like this and then it turned out to be a scam, or whatever the case is for you. Or it just fell apart because I had bad luck or I have bad luck. Don't think that. Stand in the vibrational frequency of I am worthy. I am attracting all things meant for me. I can live the life that I dream of and have the amount of money that I want, or the lifestyle that I choose to live. I can quit my job and, start doing what I love to do, whatever it is. Believe it. Don't do it yet, unless you have the opportunity. Always make sure you're set, but otherwise say yes to new opportunities. So get over yourself, pull your shit together, help people, give back, do good shit for humanity. We talked about this yesterday a little bit about being able to give of yourself, whether that's your time. It doesn't have to be money. It can be donating to charity or donating to like one of those GoFundMe, like Shauna's uncle has a GoFundMe going on right now because his house, he had a house fire and lost a lot of things, but his family is safe and we're so grateful. But if you could donate to that, even if it's $5, $10, that would be amazing. And that would be sowing seeds of abundance, because it shows I have abundance of money to give to others, or I have abundance of time to give to others. So you'll start receiving abundance in return in multiple ways. So eyes on the prize, say yes to the opportunities. You're awakening to a new chapter in your life, a whole new way of being. You've shifted to your highest timeline, guys. So act like it. Love you. Let's get to John.
Yes, I love it. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate that. Before I get started with my material, I figured I would tell you the last time I went to a ritual at my local store, Sticks and Stones here in Northern Virginia, which is where I read regularly. The ritual was a prosperity ritual, and I was the only Y chromosome present for the ritual. So I was the only guy in the room, and this is the card that I drew. The
What?
womb.
Oh, I was like, what does it mean?
I just thought of all the people in the room to get this card, it had to be me. So something good is
How
cooking.
funny.
Hey, I'm prepared to embrace my inner Venus at any moment. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We all
So,
have masculine and feminine energies, so you're perfectly balanced. I love it.
yes, I
Yep.
am. All right. So, what are we here to talk about tonight? We're here to talk about the astrological houses. But before we can do that, we should make sure that we're all on the same page about what a house actually is. So, the first thing we want to talk about is the planets. So, the planets are the what of astrology, they are the energy. Each one of the planets has a job to do. And we've kind of, in the past couple sessions I've been here, we've talked about the planets and their jobs a little bit and what they're supposed to be doing. The signs are the how of astrology. In other words, how does that energy get expressed? In which of the 12 ways is it going to get expressed in the client's life? The third piece of the puzzle is the houses, which is what we're going to talk about in part this evening. The houses are the where of astrology. In other words, in what area of someone's life would I expect this to show up? Now, every house has about 80 or 90 different keywords that can be used to describe things that are going on in the house. So what I'm going to be giving you tonight is almost like a 30,000 foot view of like, here are some of the general things you're going to see in a given house. I will also say that each one of the houses resonates with a given sign. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you know the 12 signs, you will know something about the house that we're talking about. So tonight, for example, we're going to be talking about houses 1 and 7. So the first sign of the zodiac is Aries. The 7th is Libra. So if you know something about Aries and Libra, you're going to know something about the houses. You'll see when I describe them. However, they are not the same thing. I want to be very clear on that. Because in a chart, the sign that's on the edge or the cusp of the house is very, very important. And it can be one of 12. So as I go through this tonight, just keep in mind that if you're hearing things that sound familiar to you, likely it's because you know either Aries or Libra, and you are kind of figuring it out like, oh, okay, this house is like this. This house has some of those qualities, if that makes sense. Okay. So let's get down to it. So every house in astrology has a matched pair. We call that an axis. So tonight we're going to be looking at the 1-7 axis. The cool thing about the houses is that a moment ago I said, if you know the sign, then you'll know a little bit about the house, right? The cool thing is, if you know the house, you're going to know something about the house opposite it too, because they're connected. So you may know more about this than you think you do, which is, considering the vast majority of astrology information that's out there, is pretty damn good. So don't be confused or alarmed if you're like, I think I feel like I know some of this. You probably do, especially if you have a lot of Aries planets or Libra planets in your chart. You might feel that these are pretty comfortable. Okay. So what I have planned for you tonight is to talk about the houses themselves, 1 and 7. I have several charts for each of them for us to look at. Now, this time, they are not mystery. I'm going to tell you who they are beforehand, because you people are way too intuitive. You guys guessed most of them last time anyway. So, which is awesome, right? It took less than 5 minutes for somebody to guess that the first chart was Hitler, which I thought was pretty damn impressive. At any rate, so what I'm going to do tonight is I have a number of charts I'm going to show you for the first house and the 7th to talk to you about kind of what those houses are doing and how they might manifest themselves. The other thing I will say is that I call them house nouns. In other words, there are certain people, places, and ideas that are going to be associated with each house. And as I said, there are about 80 or 90 of them. So don't feel like you got to learn them all. What I've done is I've taken a number of them, I've kind of summarized them to give you a flavor for what's going on. So that way you get a start. But yeah, the houses alone, I mean, you could write a book on most of the houses. Okay. So let's start with 1 and 7. I'm going to share up my screen. So let's do this.
1 second. My computer.
I was trying to share a link for you, Lori, but it didn't fucking work. I'm about to delete that because I don't know what the hell that is.
Picture. Screen. Here we go. Here we go. Come on. Computer's being slow. Give us a sec.
Yep.
Oh, come on. Oh, jeez. Nope. There we go. I think I almost did it. Okay, no.
I got to admit, I like that other angle better because I look so much less heavy with you two on both sides of me. It was great.
Oh, hush.
Kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Hey, I feel that because, yeah.
Yeah. I would say we all do. There we go.
There we go. Finally did it.
All right. So here we are with client chart number 1. Okay. So let's talk about the 1st and 7th houses generally before we get started. So as you're going to see here on the left-hand side, you're going to see that you had 9 o'clock. We have this arrow here. We've talked about that arrow. It's called the ascendant. I use what are called Placidus houses. Now, the idea of the Placidus house isn't that important. There are lots of different ways to cut up the pie, I call it, right? I just happen to use Placidus. So if someone asks you what house system this was, it's Placidus. Okay, and you can see that up here on the screen too. Okay, in Placidus, this first line here, this line at 9 o'clock is the rising sign. Okay, the rising sign in Placidus houses marks the border of the first house. And you can see that there's a 1 over here. Okay, so this will tell you that these 3 planets are sitting in the first house. And one of the reasons why I picked this particular chart is because this gentleman, this is a male, has a very strong first house. Okay, so I wanted to show you something with planets in it to give you an idea of what someone with a very strong first house would look like. Okay, across the way with the axis, you can see that there is also a 7th house. Now, in this particular case, the 7th house is untenanted, which means it has no planets in it. Folks, let me dispel a myth right away, okay? A lot of times people think if you don't have a planet in a house that's bad. Okay, you got 10 planets and 12 houses. I mean, I suck at math, but you're not going to have a planet in every house. So your planets, generally speaking, are going to clump together. So don't be alarmed if you don't have a planet in a house. We'll talk about how we interpret that, okay? But in this particular case, this gentleman has a packed first house. Okay, let's get into it. The first thing you're going to see in the first house is the sun. Then you're going to see Venus. Then you're going to see Mercury. So already you know in this chart, this first house is going to be important. Okay, so what's the first house? Well, let's talk about what that is. So what is the deal with the first house? The first house, the first sign of the zodiac is Aries. And so the first house has an Aries flavor to it. What kinds of things do we expect in the first house? Your personality, your individuality, your identity, your self-awareness, your ego, how you approach life. your overall attitude, your overall temperament, how you dress, how you see yourself. All of those things are part of the first house. Because it's the first house, it also represents people's first impressions of you. What do they see when they first look at you? Okay. Now, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, you're going to hear the word first a lot with this house because it is the first house, and a lot of your firsts in your life are going to come from here. So this is atmosphere in your early childhood, what you look like. A lot of times, if you know someone's astrology chart and you know their rising sign, you know what they're going to look like, which I know sounds weird, but there are whole books on the topic. Like, so for example, for me, I am a Capricorn rising, and it's like Capricorn risings, generally speaking, have these kind of larger bodies that are super solid, and that pretty much fits me to a T. Now, the first house also deals with our objectivity. Now, one other important use of the first house that we're not really going to talk about tonight because I am not a medical astrologer, okay? There are people who specialize only in medical astrology. The planets rule certain diseases, certain organs, certain parts of the body. And so you can work with astrology medically, and it takes many, many years to be proficient at it. I know some, but not much. So I'm not going to talk about that much. However, this ascendant and the ruler of the ascendant, this first house, tell us a lot about the person's overall health. In other words, if that planet that rules this house, that rules the ascendant, is performing well, then likely they're going to have fewer problems medically. And I'm being very general about that, okay? But a lot of times people with a heavy first house, if the ruler in this case is in the first, which we'll discuss in a minute, the person's not going to have as many problems medically. Okay, so the first house does have a medical use because for astrologers, this moment when the sun, when you're born, astrologers believe that moment where your soul enters your body is vital for your overall functioning. Okay, so what I'd like to do is go over a little bit about what's going on with this gentleman's chart. Okay. On the cusp of the seventh house, we have seventh. Oh, crap. Now I'm getting ahead of myself. On the cusp of the first house, we have Virgo. This person is what we call a Virgo rising. Now, for those of you who don't know, the ruling planet for Virgo is Mercury. So one of the immediate things you can do when you look at a chart is you look at what the rising sign is and what the ruling planet is of the sign on the rising. So here we have Virgo, and we look for Mercury. Mercury is here in the first house, and it's in Virgo. Okay, Mercury in Virgo is like the fastest internet service you could possibly imagine. It is super, super quick. It's good at speaking, it's good at writing, it's good at analysis, it's good at synthesis. It's excellent for any kind of problem solving, memory. All those things are really good. And so this gentleman has a high-powered Mercury ruling his first house. This guy, his health is not great, but you see his age. I mean, he's pushing 75 now. Like, he's had a long life. What is also interesting about the first house is that hair also has a part of the first house. So if you have a heavy first house, a lot of times people notice your hair too, or your hair sticks around longer. In the case of this gentleman, he's almost 75 and he's still got a full head of hair. Like no bald spots, nothing. Like I'm kind of stunned, but there it is. So already we know that this is going to be a very strong first house because the ruler of the first is sitting in the first, and it's in one of its favorite signs, if that makes sense, folks. Okay. So already we know this chart is kind of a powerhouse. Okay. So we've looked at the sign on the horizon. We've looked at the ruling planet. Now, let's see what else is in here. We have the sun. Okay. The first house is a lot about who you are, okay? When you have the sun, your light in the first house, it does two things. One, it makes people notice you because people are like, oh, I'm attracted to this person. It can bring a lot of attention on you. It can make people seek you out, which is nice. Okay? The other thing it can do, which is not as nice, is that first house deals with a lot of ego stuff. So this gentleman has his moments when he's somewhat egotistical / conceited. And when you have the first house, if it's the sun in the first, there is a tendency to think you're kind of the shit. Okay. So again, he is a very powerful Mercury here, and the sun is here, and it draws people in. As far as an occupation, this gentleman was a lawyer, but he's currently an addictions counselor. And I want to point out, in both of those, Mercury is heavy, heavy work. Because with being a lawyer, it's all about speaking and writing, right? And he's got an amazing Mercury in Virgo there. Plus, he also has Virgo rising. So he sees the world through Virgo eyes. He sees mistakes easily. He picks them out. He's a very critical person. And not necessarily because he's trying to be mean, he just sees it. So already we're talking about, like I said, a very powerful chart. Now, he has 3 planets within 7 degrees of each other, and we call that a stellium. So when I'm looking at this chart, I am saying, okay, Sun, Venus, and Mercury are kind of all sandwiched together. I read them together almost. The energies of those planets are going to blend together. Okay, so what's interesting is because the Sun and Mercury are conjunct in this chart, this is a person who is smart and he knows he's smart. It's in the first house. Things in the first house, ladies and gentlemen, are visible. The closer to the ascendant a planet is, the more visible it is. And so as you're looking at a chart, if you see a planet that's very close to the rising sign, likely when you meet them, whatever planet that is, that energy is going to come out. Okay. That's why I don't play the game of when people ask me, oh, can you tell me what my sign is? Like, no, because I could be seeing the ascendant, I could be seeing the moon, I could be seeing a planet on the ascendant or the sun or something else. Like that, you can't, that's not a game I recommend. So, but that's one of the reasons I don't play it. Now, we got the sun, we got Mercury. We haven't talked about Venus yet. Here is the challenging piece of this puzzle. The challenging piece is that Venus does not like the sign of Virgo. Venus is not a fan. The reason is because Venus wants things to be easy, right? Venus wants things to come easy. I always like to say Venus thinks work is a 4-letter word, okay? Venus's job is just to tell you what you like, tell you what you want to get, tell you what you want to keep, and what you value, right? She doesn't want to work. No, I mean, to be fair, who wants to? But some of us are more will take to it more than others. When you have Venus in Virgo, it means what you want is very specific. So this is the type of person who, when they're in a restaurant, will order a meal, but they won't order what's on the menu. They'll say, hey, I want what's on the menu, and I want you to take these 7 things out of it because I don't like these. And then could you replace it with all this? So this is the type of person, and I've actually seen this client do it. Like he actually will go into a restaurant and say, okay, here's what I want. It's not on the menu, but, and the rest of the people at the table are kind of like, oh God, here we go again. And because he's got that sun, first of all, he's well-spoken, right? And he's got that sun in the first. It's hard to deny this guy what he wants. Like it's hard to say no to him. And he has that sun in the first, so he has that attraction, and people are like, oh, he seems like a nice enough guy. Okay, I'll take those 7 things out of whatever he wanted, and I'll do it. It's it's very rare that someone will say no to him in this kind of situation. So with that Mercury in Virgo, we also get that level of persuasiveness. Like this is a person who can persuade other people. But all of this stuff is very obvious. Like if you met him within probably 5 or 10 minutes, you would see a lot of this, even if you didn't know astrologically how to describe it. Okay. So this is somebody with a packed first house. Good size ego, excellent writing skills. Venus, though, again, Venus is kind of the clunker here, because Venus in the first normally would be the person's interested in women, or interested in women's matters, or interested in the feminine divine, or interested in money, which I could also see because Venus is about values. But Venus in Virgo wants that perfection, wants that exact thing. And so when it comes to love and relationships, Venus in Virgo can be very challenging because nobody's exactly right. And again, Virgo is the sign of perfection, and nobody's perfect. So this guy has been married a long time, but like, if he hadn't, I could see why, because he's probably very critical of everything in his life. And when you're dealing with someone like this, folks, and again, if you're a Virgo out there, I am not trying to tar you all with the same brush, so please.
I'm Virgo rising.
Okay. Yeah. I say this because there's a level of discrimination that is required with Virgo. Like, Virgo people, Virgo rising people, heavy Virgo people will be able to know the difference between scarlet and vermilion without a problem. And the
My
rest of us are
youngest
like,
is a Virgo sun, and my North Node is Virgo.
okay. So you want more of that perfection. Like, you're trying to get.
Oh, yeah. That makes
North
sense.
Node.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a North Node. That's what you're trying to get to. Yeah, that's kind of life's purpose. So if you have a planet that's in Virgo, again, depending on the planet, sometimes like Mercury in Virgo is awesome. Venus in Virgo, not so much. But it's okay. We all have our astrological cards we've been dealt, me included. I don't get a pass just because I study this crap. Okay, trust me. All right. So this first house is, again, a packed house. He has a stellium. He has a stellium of all three planets here: Sun, Venus, Mercury in Virgo, sitting here. So that's a pretty powerful thing to watch for in a chart. And again, the first and seventh houses are what we call angular houses. In other words, these are angles. So this is your ascendant and descendant we're talking about tonight. But later we'll talk about the midheaven and the IC, and both of those are angles too. Anything that is within 5 degrees of an angle or in an angular house is considered more visible. Not necessarily more powerful, but it may have a greater impact overall on the chart if that's what it is. Okay. And so as we go through these, I'll have people with more planets and we can talk about different ones.
My Venus is in Virgo. I just checked.
Okay.
So yeah, but actually I was wrong. It's my South Node. That's Virgo, not my North.
Oh, South Node. Okay. So you're going for more spiritual understanding is what you're going for. You're trying to get
I'm trying to do that too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the North and South nodes, the North node is where we're trying to get to in life. The South node, we kind of call it the toilet bowl because it's where you're really comfortable. And if you stay there too long, you're not going to grow. So spiritual development is probably better for you.
Yes.
Overall, And
I'm so glad that I have this podcast because, hey, it's helping me.
No, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. All right. So while we're here, let's look at this gentleman's seventh house, and I'll talk about what the seventh house is. So remember I said a moment ago that the houses have a relationship. First and seven have a relationship. The first house is about the self, right? Me. The seventh house is what the ancient astrologers used to call, I know, the not self, which doesn't really tell you much, right? This seventh house represents people who are in your life in one-to-one relationships. So the seventh house deals with long-term romantic relationships. That includes marriage, but doesn't have to be. Business partnerships. The seventh house deals with your overall approach to relationships, what we expect in a relationship, and, special note, the kind of partners we attract. That seventh house is key to your relationship future, friends and neighbors. Let me tell you, it is really important. And the ruling planet of that sign is also going to be important. Now, in that house, we also deal with, they call it, I've heard it said that it's the opposite sex. Now, if you have a same sex partner, your seventh house is still going to be romantic relationships. But in many cases in ancient astrology, they used to think of it as the opposite sex because they didn't think about relationships the way that we do now. Anyone with whom you have a bond of love, even if that person is a platonic friend, seventh house. The seventh house is what you lack. This is what you have. This is what you lack. So that's why when you learn astrology, that one of the most important things to learn is, what am I looking for? What does my astrology say I'm going to attract? Because I don't know about you, but I occasionally, maybe more than occasionally, hear about people who kind of date the same person over and over again, but in different bodies. And if you don't look at this and figure out, hey, these are the kind of things I'm attracting, then you'll tend to make those mistakes over and over again. Okay. Also, the seventh house, because it is the not self, deals with cooperation, compromise, harmony, right? People in the seventh house want to get along. Okay. Public relations, diplomacy, deal making. Okay. Any kind of fairness, equality, balance. If this is sounding like Libra, folks, it is, because Libra this house has a Libra flavor to it. It's the seventh sign of the zodiac. This is the seventh house. So again, they're not the same, but if you start hearing words and you're going, hey, this sounds like Libra, there's a reason for that. Now, the interesting part of the seventh is that it's all about relationships, right? Well, it also is relationships with people who hate us, okay? This house is about what we call open enemies or detractors, okay? And I do not want this comment to come off in any way as sexist. I've just heard women do it, but I often hear women go, oh shit, I hate her. I don't hear men say it that often, but this would be a seventh house kind of thing. If you have a nemesis, right? This is your nemesis. This is the person at the office who just can't stand you and you can't stand them, and everybody knows it. These are the people who take pot shots at you. Now, karma is also part of the seventh house. So if you know what's in there, you also may have an idea what your karmic debt might be. Also, the seventh house, when we look at charts for people who are going to court, right? The first house represents you. The seventh house is your opponent. If you are playing a game like a football game, astrologers often predict the outcome of sporting events. This is the home team. This is the visiting team. This is the team that gets the ball first. This is the one that doesn't get the ball first. So that first and seventh house often is when you are competing with someone else. You are the first house of the chart. They're the seventh. Now, when you're talking about specific relationships, I'm also referring to business relationships. So I am an astrologer. I'm also a tarot card reader. When someone comes to me as my client, I have a seventh house relationship with them because I'm having a one-to-one service that I'm providing. That would be your stylist. That would be your therapist. That would be the person who repairs your car. That would be the person who you work with for your business accounting, like your accountant, your financial analyst, all of those people are considered seventh house relationships. So
would Rebel be mine?
I'm sorry?
Rebel would be mine?
Well, yeah. I mean, you work together.
Okay, I was say, if we're not exchanging money, does that count? Or
oh, it's a partnership. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
she would be a seventh house relationship to you. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Money doesn't have to be exchanged. It's about
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I
connection.
was like, okay.
Yeah. So as you look at the seventh house, remember what I said. It's about what's missing. It's about what you're looking for. So let's talk about this gentleman. So as you can see, he has Pisces here on the cusp of the seventh house, and his seventh house is untenanted. Okay. I've said it before, I will say it again. Some people will look at a chart and see nothing in the seventh house and assume that they won't get married because they have no seventh house, nothing in the seventh. Please do not do that. Okay. I actually had to say to somebody once who had nothing in the first, they thought, oh, I'm freaking out. I don't have anything in that house. I said, what am I going to tell you? You have nothing in the first, so you don't have a personality? Of course you have a personality. Like, that's ridiculous. So again, don't look at a house that has nothing in it, an untenanted house, and be concerned. Okay, there's no need for concern. As astrologers, we can still work with it. We do it all day long, so no problem. All right, so back to this gentleman. He has Pisces on the cusp of the seventh house. Okay, the ruling planet for the sign of Pisces would be Neptune. So this gentleman has Neptune in the second house. So what does all that mean? It means that this guy is looking for a deep emotional, it's Pisces, right? Looking for a deep emotional connection with someone who might be a little bit dreamy, someone who might seem a little otherworldly, someone who's very spiritual and connected to the divine. Like that would be a person that this guy would be interested in. Also, Pisces does have a tendency to be self-sacrificing, which means that this person may expect their partner to do more just because they may be expecting someone to be of service to them. Pisces is a sign of service. Now, what is interesting is that Pisces is a double-bodied sign, okay? And when you see the symbol for Pisces, you often see the two fish, right? As I've talked about before in here, there's a reason for that. The two fish represent the ability of the Pisces person to rise to the challenge or swim away and evade. And so when you have a double-bodied sign on the seventh house, it is often, not always, but often a marker of a person having more than one significant romantic relationship in their life. In other words, it would be likely for this guy to be married twice. That's kind of how we look at it. Now, for those of you who are Geminis, if you have Gemini on the seventh house cusp, the same idea applies because it's a double-bodied sign. Any of the other mutable signs, if you have Virgo there, or if you have Sagittarius there, those ones are a little bit tougher to work with because Sagittarius is the bachelor sign or the bachelorette sign. So what they're looking for is someone to give them freedom even in a relationship context, right? Whereas Virgo over here and this cusp is looking for someone who is, I don't want to use the P word, but perfect, right? Or close to perfect, or meeting a very specific set of requirements. Okay? So again, even though this guy doesn't have anything in the house, as you can see, I've said a whole lot about him. Now, to go a step further, we talked about Neptune in the second. Okay, so when you have a ruling planet in a different house, there's a connection between the seventh house and the second because Neptune rules Pisces, right? So the second house has to do with our emotional security. And so this guy, when he's looking for a partner, the focus for him is going to be someone who is of service, someone who is emotionally available and emotionally intimate, someone who's likely very spiritual, and someone who is going to help him with his own emotional security, someone who he feels safe with. this one example might be someone who they know isn't going to cheat on them, right? Someone who they feel very secure about. And again, that's that next level of interpretation that we can look at. But this is a general overview of how we look at the first and seventh houses. So again, this first house deals with the self, the ego, the appearance, and how the world sees us and how we see ourselves, our appearance, right? The seventh house is about one-to-one relationships with other people, business partnerships, friends, enemies, anyone who does a one-on-one service with us. All of those people are considered seventh house relationships. And you can tell a lot about what you're looking for in a relationship by looking at the seventh house and the ruler of the seventh. And Michelle, no worries. I'm going to do this thing that I just did again like 7 more times. So you may not have to rewind and see it. I'm gonna do this exercise again a number of times. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer right now before I pull up the other charts?
I have Pisces in the 7th house.
Oh, you have Pisces on the 7th house cusp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have it. I
have Taurus, and that's crazy because my mom's one, and I don't really like my mom.
That doesn't mean you're looking for a Taurus. It just means you're looking for a solid, stable, reliable, hardworking partner. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean you're looking for mom. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. So I was like, and that's funny that you say that because I've found in my husband opposite of everything of my parents. So,
yeah. Well, it's interesting how it comes out because, for example, my dad and I do not get along. And my wife and my dad don't really get along either. And they have the same sun and moon. So, like, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
There's a lot more that goes into it, as you can see. So,
yeah.
Don't make any assumptions, you know.
Okay.
But I will say that likely, if you have Taurus on that cusp, you're going to be comfortable with Taurus people. And if you look at the number, the degree on the cusp, anybody who has the sun right around that degree is going to be comfortable for you because they're going to be sitting right on that angle. It's like, oh, I feel like I know this person forever. Yeah, that would be why. That's why also people who have the same birthday as you or close to it within a couple of days, you feel connected to them because your suns are close.
Okay.
Yeah. People have been asking me to do synastry in here, and you weren't here for me to say this, Angela, but like, I don't want to melt everybody's brains yet. They need a few months before I do that. So,
I'm excited for it.
I will do that. I promise I will do that, folks. But like, I'm no basics. We do baby steps, and then I promise we'll get to synastry. I promise. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions. Yeah, so Michelle, if you have Aries on the cusp of your 7th, then likely Aries people, if they have their sun there or they have another planet there, you would find them, you would probably get along with them pretty well. And just as an aside, in my professional practice, when I pull somebody's chart, when I'm doing a chart for someone, when I have a client, I pull their chart and I'm looking at their 7th house. Why? Because I am their 7th house. As their astrologer, I am their 7th house. So I have to know what planets are there so I can know what I have to provide for them. You know, if you have Aquarius there, then likely you're going to be attracted in the 7th. You're likely going to be attracted to different people or people who are progressive, people who want to break the mold, people who are eccentric, people who are different, and in some cases, people that other people might ostracize. You know, you might be attracted to the person in the corner that nobody wants to talk to, which is actually pretty awesome in my book, but as a for example. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have other charts to look at, but this is client chart number 1. So ethically speaking, folks, when I don't have a client's permission to have to look at their chart, I always put up their chart as an anonymous so people don't know. But in the future, if people want to volunteer their charts and they want me to look at them, and I will be happy to do that. So I'm sure you will both have people who are going like, yeah, pick mine. Happy to as we go down the road, I'm happy to do some of those. So you let me know. Okay, let me go in and I will pull the next one. Okay, open. Let's see who we've got here, who we can work with. Let's look at Tay Tay. All right, Taylor Swift, ladies and gentlemen. Astrologically speaking, of course. All right. First thing we're going to look at, as usual, we're going to look at the ascendant. So over here, the sign on the ascendant is Scorpio. Scorpio rising people see the world through the eyes of the Scorpio, which is they are likely quite intense. They likely have an emotional undertone with a lot of things that they say and do. They're likely very focused. They pay attention to everything. They're very careful about what they say and do because they don't want it to be used against them later. And I like to say people with a Scorpio rising tend to have a little bit of an edge. In other words, you kind of go, I don't think I want to fuck with this person. There's a little bit of an edge there. So one of the things I would say is keep in mind, Scorpio is the most intense sign of the zodiac. Now, intense does not mean good, and it does not mean bad either, just a lot of it. Okay. Right away, we notice, look at the degree. This is her rising sign is 25 Scorpio. Her sun, her Mars is at 26 Scorpio. All right, folks, when you see a planet that's that close to the rising sign, I mean, that's the pimple on the nose for an astrologer. Like, I am so going to go after that as soon as if Taylor Swift was my client, I'd be like, okay, so I know exactly where we're going to start. Mars in Scorpio is extremely powerful. So in the ancient world, Mars used to rule two signs. Mars used to have Aries and Scorpio. Now, the reason why Pluto didn't come onto the scene until later as a planet ruler for Scorpio is because Pluto wasn't discovered until 1931. And just as an aside, when Pluto was discovered, Walt Disney, for the first time ever, did a co-marketing thing where they said they were going to name the next character after the planet. So in 1931, that's when Pluto the dog came out. Just as an aside. Astrology affecting the world. Anyway, so as you're looking at this chart and you see Mars and Scorpio has, I'm not going to lie, Scorpio is a very sexual sign. And so there's an understated kind of sexiness with Mars and Scorpio. They're usually very attractive and you don't always know why. It isn't necessarily physical attraction. It's something that you just kind of pick up from the ether. You just kind of know, like, oh, this person, all right.
I got Mars and Scorpio, or Scorpio and Mars.
Yeah, Mars and Scorpio is amazing for a lot of reasons. Mars and Scorpio is very, very powerful and it's subtle. Mars and Aries, for example, is like, hey, meet me outside and we'll fight, right? Mars and Scorpio is like, hey, I'm going to talk to you like nothing's wrong, and then I'm going to go slash your tires. And
I'm literally Mars and Aries, and that I've been expelled from I don't know how many schools because that was my thing. Come fucking fight me. We'll throw down. I'm ready.
Mars and Aries is always looking for a fight. That's part of the challenge.
That makes so much sense now. I know,
which is great. Which is great in the business world in some ways because like you would be an amazing CEO, but like if you can rein it in, where Mars and Scorpio is subtle. Mars and Scorpio isn't overt. Mars and Scorpio wants to win because they want to do a psychological operation on you. Or they want to do something where they're not really sure. Mars, the kind of person that Mars and Scorpio is, if you were to break up with a Mars and Scorpio person, they're the type of person who would go to where you normally go and just be there just so you see them and then leave.
Yeah, that
And you
sounds.
go like, did I really see them?
Do you guys
Huh.
remember that reading I did the other day about the unhealed me? Yeah, that he just
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
my. I'm a Mars and Aries, and I'm a Scorpio rising. So as you're saying that,
Mm.
I'm like, that's fucking me.
Well, and again, if you do have Scorpio rising, you don't have to admit anything. But Scorpio rising does have a tendency to have a pretty high libido too, because it's part of the physical body.
Do I
Um,
not talk about dick all the time?
well, this is our first time together, so
Oh no, I'm talking to Rebel. I was
oh,
like,
okay.
into our whole community, they know.
I was,
So
I was like, that's new to me, but okay, it's yeah.
yeah, now you know. That
Now I
makes
know.
so much
Okay,
sense.
excellent. Scorpio rising with Mars and Scorpio here is already a powerful connection. So, what does that mean for Taylor Swift? Her energy level is probably off the charts. Like, there are stories about her because Mars represents the physical body and it's on the ascendant. So, if she wasn't who she was, I could have seen her doing something like bodybuilding or sports or something, or law enforcement, something where her body is the show. And in some ways, her body is the show, you know? So this is a very powerful position and it's a high energy position. The challenge with Mars and Scorpio is Mars and Scorpio doesn't really know when to quit, right? Because Mars is about doing. Mars is your personal SWAT team. Mars and Scorpio will never give up, which is why you just don't mess with Mars and Scorpio. You don't. It's not smart. If they're not done with you, anyway, if I look at the modern astrology ruler, we have Pluto here in the 12th house. Pluto is also in Scorpio. So, as if there wasn't enough raw power in this chart alone, with Mars, which could be ruling the first house, Pluto ruling the first house, both of them are in Scorpio. So, this woman is go, go, go all the time. She's a very powerful person. And you can see that right away from the chart.
I have
Like,
Pluto and Scorpio too.
yeah, Pluto and Scorpio is generational, so many of you will have it, and that's yeah, and it's a very powerful thing, and we see a lot of interesting stuff from people who have Pluto in Scorpio. Like it's
I do too.
yeah, it's really interesting. So, but that's generational. Anyway, so already when we look at the first house, we're already seeing a powerful first house. Then looking down here, look what's here: the sun. Yes, it's in Sagittarius, but it's still in the first house. She's going to turn heads. Once again, like the gentleman we just talked about, she's going to get attention. Just that's pretty standard. Now, I know for her, she's not particularly egotistical from what I understand. She seems like a pretty nice person, which is good. But again, this sun is pretty far away from the ascendant. So it might lessen some of the effects of that if there is any. I'm sure she has her moments, but it's fine, but not a big deal. But again, we have Mars in Scorpio here, and we've got the sun here. So again, someone with some powerful planets in the first house. Now we can also, we're not going to do it tonight, but when I do the second and eighth houses, I'll definitely be coming back here because you can see 7, you can see 2 and 8. See all those planets across the axis? Yeah, we have a lot to talk about there, not tonight, but a lot to talk about. All right, let's move over to the 7th. Okay. Taurus on the 7th house, ruled by Venus. Okay. So once again, we have someone who has a 7th house ruled by a planet in the 2nd house of money, which is interesting. The 2nd house deals with money and finances, but also emotional security too. So what is she looking for in a partner? She's looking for solid, stable, reliable, somebody who does what they say what they're going to do, somebody who likes fun things, somebody who likes simple pleasures. You know, she's not going to go with somebody who wants to like eat, 7-course meals every night. Like that's not going to be her type. But because the ruling planet of Taurus is here in the 7th, in the 2nd, I mean, you can talk about emotional security with the second, as usual. But you can also talk about money. And also, the second house deals with our physical safety as well. So when you're talking about a Taurus person, if we're talking about a guy, like it would likely be someone who she feels safe around, kind of a big burly dude, you know, who's reliable and calm, because Taurus does have a tendency to be nice and calm. But what's also interesting is that she has Venus in Aquarius, which means for her, likely if someone was trans, she probably wouldn't have a problem with that as a partner, you know, because it's Venus in Aquarius. She's interested in the unique individual person. She's not as worried about gender, if that makes sense. Michelle, the second house deals with money and finances. The second house deals with our emotional security, our physical security, and it also deals with possessions and stuff. So you can see there's a loaded second. Like I said, when we do the second eighth axis, we'll talk about what is likely her extreme love of stuff. The second house deals with any possession that can be moved. So the only thing that the second really doesn't deal with is your home, your house. Like that's the fourth house. But we'll get there. Promise. Okay. All right. So this is Taylor Swift. This again gives you an idea of how we do this work. Any questions before I move on? I've been trying to look in the chat. All right, Sarah Carlson. So for you, if you have moon in the second, then that means likely moon money is security for you. So savings account is going to be super important. Also, your mom too might be someone that you feel responsible for, or might make you feel safe. Or when you're struggling, she might be someone who gives you emotional security also.
I have my moon in the 7th.
So you're comfortable with a partner then? Okay. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Generally, moon and what?
Pisces.
Okay. Yeah. Moon in Pisces is so incredibly intuitive and sensitive that you have to be very careful with the partners that you bring into your life, because they can kind of they can drag you down if you're not if spiritually they're not right. They can really have an impact on you. Also, if the relationship is more important than you personally, for a Pisces moon in that position, that would be very challenging.
Good to know. Thank you. I actually literally started having seizures whenever my ex and I got together and he moved into my house. And I had my last seizure right before I left him, like a week or two before I left him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I could see that. Also, you slept better when he left too, didn't you?
Yeah.
The moon deals with sleep patterns.
Yeah. A lot better.
Yeah.
Mine's a Capricorn moon and Rebel's Capricorn sun, so I like that.
Well, I
don't know if that's a reflection.
Too.
Are you?
Moon and rising. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hell yeah,
brother.
Yeehaw! Cappy Moon in the house. All right, let me take a look at another chart. Unless you hate this and you want me to stop, which is always an option.
Keep going. Keep going.
All right, fine, if you insist. Let me open up another chart. Nope, Tay, you can go bye-bye for now. Let's see. Let me see who's got a nice first house. Okay. Nope. Now that's going to be an interesting one at some point. Marilyn Manson, huh? All right. Here we go. Let's look at Paul Newman.
He's been coming up for me like a lot. It's really weird how I had saw this commercial and I was like, man, whatever happened to Marilyn Manson? And ever since then, I've heard him like 9 fucking times since then. So It's really weird how I was like, whatever happened to him? Well, the universe is like, here, bitch, here's a whole bunch of Marilyn Manson. So it's weird.
Hey, you know what? Shit happens for a reason, you know? All right, so let's take a look at this. So let's start off with the rising sign. It is Capricorns. This gentleman is a Cappy rising. Cappy rising folks are looking at the world through a long-term lens. In other words, and I'm a Cappy rising too, a lot of us are looking for the next move, the next move, the next move. We tend to be ambitious. We tend to understand that things take time, but we move forward slowly and strategically to get what we want. Also, Cappy rising people are good at the bottom line. Just tell me how it is. You know, just tell me how it is. And then we do. And it's easy. I mean, for us anyway. Okay. So here we have Mr. Newman who has Mercury and Capricorn in the house. But before we do that, let's look at Saturn, because Saturn is the ruling planet. So where is Saturn? Saturn is up here in Scorpio in the 11th house. The 11th house, ladies and gentlemen, is that one of the houses that deals with mass media, like, oh, I don't know, movies and acting, just throwing it out there. And so we already know that there's a connection between who he is and the public at large, okay, already with Saturn there. Now, Saturn in Scorpio tends to be very driven and determined about their boundaries. So especially I know with his private life, he's very, very, very private about it. Like it's not something he discusses often, especially his relationship with his wife. Like, Capricorn generally is a sign that isn't going to dish. Like, they're extremely private people. Capricorn rising kind of looks at the world that way. They want to be discreet generally about things. All right, so we know that there's a connection to the public with the ruling planet of the chart. And by the way, the planet that rules the rising sign is called the chart ruler. Okay, that planet is super important. No matter where it is, no matter what it's doing, it's important. So when you're looking at a chart, you look at the rising sign and you look at the planet and you see where it is and what it's doing and what it's connected to. So take a look at this. The midheaven is here. And this guy has Saturn on the midheaven, which in any kind of business setting is awesome and amazing. Like, it's great. So, like, you already have an idea that if he puts his Saturn discipline to work, Saturn's job is self-discipline and boundaries. And his boundaries have gotten him pretty far, apparently. All right, so let's look back at the first house. We have Mercury in Capricorn. This is a guy who might learn slowly, but what he learns, he remembers forever. And it's right next to his Capricorn rising sign, so likely he's probably conservatively spoken, soft-spoken, down to earth, typically not a yeller, you know. Venus in Capricorn is about forging long-term relationships and buying and acquiring things that have value. I like to think of Venus in Capricorn as the long-term investor, right? Venus in Capricorn doesn't want to buy something cheap for the moment. They want to save up to get what's important later. Like, they want something of real quality. So if you were getting Paul Newman a gift, and if you happen to talk to him, I need to talk to you first. But anyway, the idea is that you would want to save a little more money and get the person something smaller, but with quality, like a more quality gift. Once again, we have someone with the sun in Aquarius. Okay, the sun in Aquarius is interesting because it is what we call the sun in detriment. The sun's most powerful sign, not the best, so don't get carried away, Leo people. The most powerful sign for the sun is Leo. The sun in detriment is Aquarius. It's the opposite sign. What does that mean? It means that for Aquarius people, the sun is there, but they're not as concerned about the ego, because the sun's who you are, right? Even though this guy has the sun in the first, and he does attract a lot of attention, of course, he's not out for his own glory. He really, really isn't as much. He wants the collective glory, right? It's Aquarius. He wants to be a part of everybody. You know, he wants to be a part of the world. He wants to make the world better, right? You know, Sun in Aquarius, we often say two things about that. We say Sun in Aquarius is genius or madness. And we also say that Sun in Aquarius, we give them a cause and we get out of the way. Whatever the cause is, we just go, okay, do your thing. Save the whales. Hey, I'm out of the way. Go, do it. And they're good at it. But again, he has the Sun in the first house. So even though he has the Sun in the first, I wouldn't necessarily say this would be an arrogant person, even if I didn't know who it was, because the Sun in Aquarius tends to be less focused on the self and more focused on the greater good. Now, what is also interesting is that Aquarius is the sign that rules astrology. So when I was learning astrology and I was talking to Aquarians about it, a lot of Aquarians were like, oh, you can't put people in 12 boxes. That's ridiculous because we're all unique. And after I heard that for like the fourth time, I actually pulled this one Aquarius guy aside and I said, you know what's really interesting is that 4 of you in a row have said that. And you were all Aquarians. Does that not sound odd to you? And the answer was coincidence. And I was like, sure it is. Anyway, the point is that when you have an Aquarius sun, it's like looking at the sun on a cloudy day. The sun's still there. It's behind the clouds, but it doesn't mean that it's not working. It just works differently, right? When a planet is in a sign that it doesn't work well in, it's just differently abled. Okay. And that's the way I want you to look at it. It's not better or worse. It's differently abled. So we have a guy who's got a pretty decent setup in his first house. Now, in the case of Jupiter, Jupiter is at 8. The rising sign is at 13. I would consider this Jupiter also a first house planet. I would push it into the first house because it's close enough to this rising sign angle. Okay. That's a judgment call on the part of the astrologer, but it also means that in this chart, Jupiter will be very important too. That's all that it means. That's where we would start. Jupiter, of course, is the planet of publishing, as in books, but it is also the planet of expansion. So Jupiter's job is to get our ideas out there to a lot of people. And I think it's pretty fair to say that Paul Newman's done a pretty good job of that.
He's even got his organic products in the grocery store.
Yes. Yes, he does. And yeah, and organic is a perfect Aquarius thing. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that he would be interested in. As we look over to the 7th house, we have Cancer on the cusp of the 7th. So what does that mean? This person would be looking for a partner who is nurturing, warm, emotional, someone who is protective. Because remember that it's Cancer the crab, and they got a shell for a reason, folks. Okay, so they want someone who's more protective. Also, it can indicate that they want to have children. Because Cancer is such a nurturing sign, a lot of Cancer people do want children. And so as you look at this, you're looking for someone who's going to nurture you. Now, I'm also going to show you this. Pluto is sitting at 12 Cancer. The rising sign is at 13 Cancer. Pluto is absolutely considered in this 7th house. Absolutely, without a doubt. And what it means is that this person's partner is vitally important and has a lot of power. So even though Paul Newman has a lot of power, his spouse probably has even more. He probably defers to her quite often, would be my guess. And as I look at this, I notice that the sun of Cancer is ruled by the moon. Well, where's the moon? It's the moon in Pisces. So which reinforces the idea that this person wants a very powerful, intimate, emotional connection. That's what they're looking for in the chart. And, if you play your cards right, this is a person who probably wields a tremendous amount of influence in this client's life. Now, Generally speaking, I will say that when you see Pluto around or near the 7th house, a couple of things can occur. The first one is that sometimes you will attract people who want to take advantage of you. One of the more shadow side parts of Pluto, which represents power, is abuse. And so if you have Pluto, in this case, on the 7th house or in the 7th house, you have to be very careful of relationships and making sure that the power dynamic between you is balanced. At the same time, you may also attract people who want you to tell them what to do. It could go either way, folks. Okay. So as you're looking at this, keep in mind that Pluto is a planet that deals with power dynamics and relationships. In this particular case, because the moon is here in the 2nd, once again, we have that connection to safety and money for a rainy day as part of this chart too. And as you can see from Paul Newman's extensive investments in various areas, like I don't worry about him going on food stamps anytime soon. But with the moon in the 2nd, ruling that 7th house, he would want his partner to be on involved in that too. Questions on this? I'm looking to see. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Chart is littered with Cancer. It's my ascendant. Okay. Yes, and cats. A lot of times people with the moon, cats are ruled by the moon. So if you have heavy moon in your chart, you know. And yes, Michelle, if you don't have children for yourself, you will find children to nurture, and it looks like you have.
I have heavy ass moon in my chart. I've got 6. It shows placements with the moon in my chart.
Yeah, that's so. Especially with a Pisces moon, I know some incredible psychics and readers with Pisces moons. I mean, it's a great position for that. The thing with the Pisces moon is protection required all the time. You have to know how to shield. If you don't, you're going to find if you go into a crowd, oh.
Yeah, that's why I'm so good with my protection, is because I had to learn. But it's sextile my Mercury, trine my Mars, square my Saturn, trine Pluto, opposing my rising, and squared my midheaven.
Okay. Then it's a power. Then it's going to be a big player if it's connected to all those planets. It's very well integrated in the chart, though, which is good. Brandy asked about Cancer moon in the 12th house. Cancer moon is a heavy moon. Yeah, hon. Cancer moon is very powerful anyway, but Cancer moon in the 12th, if you're not doing work as a psychic or a reader, you damn well should be. That's all I have to say.
She's good. She's a badass. Okay. You'll be seeing Brandy soon.
Yeah. The idea, though, Brandy, is that you have to make sure that your emotions are honored, because the 12th house, which of course we'll talk about eventually, is a place where we hide things. I call it the New Jersey of the zodiac because it's where you bury all your shit. Okay. So it's important for you, if you have the moon in the 12th, that your emotions have to be front and center. You have to honor them. And if you don't, you're going to find that you're kind of pissed off all the time because nobody sees it. There you go.
Thank you, John. Thank you. See, Brandy, you hear that? Yes, I'm knowing.
All right, so let's take a look at another chart because we still have some time left. I also pulled some charts of people with a decent 7th house, so we'll look at those. Where is she? Let's look at Miley Cyrus, because why not? Okay, in this particular case, you've got someone who has an ascendant and they basically have an untenanted 1st house. Okay, fine. No problem there. What we do is we take a look for the rising sign, which is Taurus, and the ruling planet of the rising, which is Venus. So let's look at where Venus is. Okay, Venus is in Capricorn in the 8th. So what is going to be an important part of this person's life? It's going to be having an excellent partner, because the 8th house represents support from other people. Okay. The 8th house also represents anything involving what I call the inevitables: death, sex, taxes, other people's money, wills and trusts, inheritances. All of that stuff involving another person is part of the 8th. So her life probably will focus on that as well. In addition, because she has Venus in Capricorn, once again, she's looking for long-term wealth, long-term security, and again, with a partner, likely, because this 8th house deals with partnerships. Now, as we look at this first house, again, just because she doesn't have anything there doesn't mean that she's going to be less than a lot of other people we've talked about. Certainly not. I mean, we've all seen what she's done. So let's go over and look at her 7th real quick. Sun in the 7th. Okay. So it's interesting when you have the sun in the 7th. You know, we've talked about sun in the 1st, right, where the focus is on the self. You look at the sun in the 7th, Miley Cyrus, for her, likely it's very important to have a partner and be a partner. She is likely much more comfortable when she's in a relationship than when she's not. But it's the sun in Sagittarius, ladies and gentlemen. Sagittarius is the bachelorette sign. And the reason for that is because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of freedom and don't fence me in. And so for her, relationships have to be powerful, but loose enough to work with. I'm going to explain that. So on the cusp, we have Scorpio. This person is looking for an intense, dedicated, potentially sexual relationship with someone who has a deep emotional connection to them. Like, that's pretty easy, right, to see. But it's in the 6th house. The 6th house is neat because the 6th house is day-to-day work. So likely Miley would meet and fall in love with someone she sees every day, like someone she goes to work with. I could see that. I could also see with the 6th house deals with anything medical, right? Typically our acute medical conditions and day-to-day medical stuff is in the 6th. So like I could see her, you know, falling for her doctor or medical assistant, like could see that too. But also the 6th house deals with anything involving animals. So like if she were involved with an animal cause, like I could potentially see her getting connected with someone who is interested in animals too. Now, as we look at the ruling planet, Pluto, we happen to notice that it is conjunct the moon and it is conjunct Mercury. So that stellium is all packed in together. Again, it's 28 Scorpio. So I would consider the moon part of the 7th and I would consider Mercury part of the 7th. But Pluto is close enough. I wouldn't necessarily consider it part of the 7th, but it has a powerful impact on this chart because the moon is about mom. So typically when people have moon Pluto together, it's about mom having a really strong impact on the child. Positively or negatively, folks, we don't always know. We have to ask the client that stuff. But I have seen it where I actually have a client who has almost this exact same setup, moon Pluto in Scorpio. And what's really interesting is that this woman's mom is her best friend and her worst enemy at the same time. Mom comes to all her parties. Her and mom go to Europe together. They go to shows in New York together. Like they love each other. They have a great time until it comes to politics. My client is lefty liberal. Mom is righty McWriterson. So whenever certain politicians who will not be named come up online, my client decides to trash this particular individual and mom gets very upset. And they've had some very public, as in online, keyboard warrior feuds about this stuff. And so Mom is a very powerful influence in her life, not always a good one. Again, we don't want to say good or bad, how powerful. In this case, mom has a very good influence on her generally. They probably just shouldn't talk about politics at all. Now, one other interesting connection you can see in this chart, notice that this Mercury here is close enough to the descendant that I would consider it part of the seventh. So again, we're talking about someone who is very intense Scorpio about words, memory, powerful speaker, powerful writer, knows when to shut up, knows when to speak up, right? Very strategic about that sort of thing. But the red number indicates that Miley Cyrus has a Mercury retrograde natally in her chart. Now, that's not a big deal. 20% of people have Mercury retrograde in their chart-ish, somewhere in there, okay? What it means, though, is that when she communicates, she has to tell people what she's thinking and feeling and not assume that they already know. Because when you have Mercury in Scorpio, and I have it also, not retrograde, but I do have it, it is very easy for you to get into a place where you're like, they don't fucking listen to me, nobody's hearing me, but we really haven't told them what's going on yet. We just kind of expect people to know, and it's like, that's not really the way communication works most effectively. So Miley definitely would have to work on her communication skills. And because there's this connection to the moon, a very intense Scorpio moon, she would have to be very careful about what she says when she's in a bad mood. Because Scorpio moon can be a very challenging placement. It can be one where you deal with a lot of relationship problems, folks. And look where it is. It's 2 degrees from her relationship house cusp, her descendant. So I would not be surprised at all if her relationship life was pretty messy. Hopefully I'm wrong, but that would be something I like you guys to hear this, because if I had this person as a client in front of me, these are the kinds of questions I would be asking them. When we see a chart, we don't assume a damn thing. We start making some connections in our chart and in our head from the chart, and we go, how is it possible that this might manifest in the client's life? And sometimes it comes from a place where we don't always expect, and we're like, oh, okay. So what we try to do in our heads is put together some hypotheses that we talk about with the client, and then they tell us. And one of the best things that happens in a chart reading is when someone speaks their chart. When all you have to do is say, hey, tell me about X, and you just sit back and the client speaks their chart, then you know you're on the right track. But yeah, Miley has this powerful setup on the cusp of the 7th house, which definitely makes life interesting for her. And the challenge is that with something like this, she would have to be very, very careful about which partners she picks. And I would be interested to know, because with the moon in Scorpio, there can be some very challenging times when it comes to partners. And especially with Pluto there, and they're all 3 of them are in Scorpio, I would be wondering about a client's like sexual history. Like that might be one question I would ask, is about that. Like, have you had a lot of lovers? When did you start dating? Because Scorpio moon is not always easy to work with. Scorpio moon is what we call the moon in fall. And so it's very intense and it's very emotional, but it can be very possessive and jealous in a relationship. So it's something we have to watch for. Michelle, I'm glad you love learning it. I told the ladies earlier, I'm just making all this up. I really don't know any of this crap. I'm just guessing. So hopefully I'm guessing right. I'm kidding.
Yeah, he told Angela that I didn't study any of this. I just kind of threw it all together and just guessed.
For the last 30
Hey, it's resonating, so
I've just been kind of throwing it out there and seeing what sticks,
For pulling it out your ass, you're doing a damn good job. Everybody's resonating.
Listen, I did not spend Monday nights for 3 years at the Midwest School of Astrology to not know my shit.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, Angela, don't believe him. He
Thanks
knows
for
what
your
he's talking about.
thanks for your support, Steph. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I am full of shit, just not about this. All right, we have time for one more, and I have a very early morning tomorrow, so I will do one more, and then I will leave you for this evening. Let's see what else I have. Where is she? Not in here. Let me go back. All right. Let's look at Mr. Cobain. Now, I would like you to just appreciate for a moment all of this fruit salad here between the first and the seventh house. Okay. This would have been a person that I would have had to do a lot of work with on first and seventh house stuff, just generally. Okay. When you have planets across the axis like this is a time when you know as an astrologer you're going to have to focus on what's going on between those two. Okay, but let's look at the first house again as usual. We'll follow our protocol. Okay, so we have a Virgo rising again. Interesting. Okay, this time though, look at where the ruling planet is. It is Mercury in Pisces. Okay, Mercury in Pisces is the opposite sign of Mercury in Virgo. Mercury in Pisces does much better with nonverbal communication than actual communication. They kind of like to feel their way. Like Mercury in Pisces is not the type of person that you say like, hey, tell me what you're feeling. Like Mercury in Pisces will be like, they don't really want to do that. But you're also going to notice, folks, the degree, 18 degrees of Pisces. Look where the descendant is, 1959. So once again, I would consider this Mercury in Pisces part of the seventh house because it's that close. As we look over to the left and we look at Pluto and Uranus here, they sandwich the ascendant. I mean, you're going to have to, like, those again are like the flashing red lights. So as I look at this, Pluto, the planet of power in relationships, okay, and look what it's opposing. It's opposing Mercury, okay, planet of communication. So I'm already going to probably say he had difficulty with relationships and communicating in them. Then we also know that both Pluto and Uranus oppose Venus and Jupiter. So all of this stuff is connected over the first and seventh axis. The first house is who am I? So he's got Uranus on the cusp of the first house. He's got Uranus on the ascendant. He wanted to be a unique individual. He didn't want to be like anybody else. He wanted to be innovative, cutting edge, different. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a very high energy level or tics, like he couldn't sit down. A lot of times Uranus is the planet of electricity. The ascendant is how we see the world, and it's our physical body, okay? So again, I'm thinking this guy probably had a lot of tics, and he probably couldn't sit still. Then we have Pluto, the planet of power, sitting right here on the ascendant, a powerful person. Like you could feel it, okay? And he had a lot of power. He wielded a lot of it. Now, one other thing I will mention while we're here is I want you to check this out. Sun in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. Okay. He's got 4 Pisces planets. Pisces is the sign of addiction. Now, that's not to say that I would immediately assume this person was an addict. Okay. But bear with me for a minute. Saturn is the planet of boundaries, and it's in Pisces. Pisces doesn't do boundaries well at all. Pisces is like the boundless ocean, guys. Okay? Draw a line in the water and see what happens. No boundary there. Okay? Then when it comes to love and relationships, again, Venus is in Pisces. So it's like you really have to look at those planets in combination too, which we haven't really done yet. But this is a place where if you've got Venus and Saturn together, it's about getting boundaries to get the things that you want, or having self-discipline to get the things that you want. Venus in Pisces is also about being incredibly creative. And Dasha, for me, I would say about 7 degrees is about what I call my orb, which is about how far apart something should be before I consider it a conjunction. But every astrologer is a little different. So I just tell you what I use, but other astrologers use ones that are different. So anyway, but you're talking about planets, 4 planets in Pisces. Now, I am going to mention, because it's here in the 7th, I'm going to mention Chiron, which is this key. Chiron is an asteroid, and Chiron is considered the wounded healer, which means it's an area of your life where you're wounded, but you can also help others. So the fact of the matter is, Chiron is very health related, and it's here in Pisces, which again happens to be the sign of addiction. So this is not a good chart for somebody to be experimenting with any kind of drugs or alcohol. Like, this is, if I knew, I would have been like, please don't. Please don't. Now, for writing music, Venus in Pisces is one of the most creative positions there is. And because it's the 7th house, what was he looking for? Well, what did he want? He wanted the other. He wanted the relationship with other people, you know? And he also had Jupiter up here in the 11th, Jupiter in Cancer, which is a wonderful placement. The planet of the public loves me, right? So again, he had everything that you can see. I mean, like I said, this chart is very, very obvious. Okay? But once again, as you look at it, you know that I would have been talking about identity, how he is in relationships, and the difference between the two, and separating those out, especially with all these Pisces planets. Plus, he's got the moon in Cancer. So I would be looking at, the man's incredibly sensitive. Like, we would definitely be talking about sensitivity, especially because he has what we call a grand trine in water. Take a look at this. Jupiter in Cancer, making a 120-degree angle to Neptune in Scorpio, making a 120-degree angle to Venus and Saturn. So one of the challenges with a grand trine in water is that those planets all blend very well, which means that it's easy to use that as an emotional wall. Like, this is a guy who, if he needed emotional help, probably wouldn't ask, because this is a sign of emotional self-sufficiency. So as you think about this, again, I just throw that out there because the grand trine is very obvious. But grand trines, when you have 3 planets that are connected in a triangle like that, it can be very, very challenging, and people will look to use those as a defense mechanism in many cases. Okay. So as you can see, this chart has both a lot of 1st and 7th house activity. And this one is definitely, I wanted to leave it to last because it's definitely a lot to unpack and think about. But if I had this guy in front of me, like if I had him as a client, we would have had to have a serious conversation about who I am versus who other people are expecting me to be, and what role relationships have in my life, especially with Pluto here on the ascendant. because likely he would want to be the power broker in a lot of these relationships, and that doesn't always work particularly well. All right, folks. I appreciate your attention for all this time. Like I said, I got to bail a little early tonight. I have a long drive tomorrow, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people have for the next minute or two.
Thank you so much. It's always
Yes.
such a learning experience with you.
Yes.
Throw in your
That was
questions.
so informative. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
Yes, thank
And
you.
I don't what I want people to understand is that this is a long-term endeavor, right? It's great to learn about your own chart, and that's where I typically think people should start. But you can put all this together. Honestly, folks, if I can do this, you could do it. Like it
went to
just
school.
takes practice. It just takes practice. That's all.
Yeah. Great. I'm not good at singing.
Brandy, we're getting ready to jump off. John has an early morning tomorrow, and also he will not be here for the next bi-weekly slot because he's going to be busy. So it'll be another month before we get to see John again.
Yep.
So in a month we will talk about houses 2 and 8, unless people decide that they want to do something different, in which case I'm happy to take requests. But
we'd love to complete the series.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
But remember, a house is where a chart is energized. Where do I see this energy come out? In what relationships? In what places? All of that. So as you look at this, remember the houses are the where, the planets are the what, the signs are the how. And if you can learn that small concept, you've come a lot further than a lot of people who just go on the internet and look it up.
Yes. And you can always watch the replay, you guys, just so you can kind of gather more information, make it make sense again.
Yeah, and I can, so Michelle, you can always find me. My YouTube channel is AstroTarot John, so you can always look me up there. You can also look at astrotarotjohn.com. It's still under construction. I'm still working on it. However, that site is out there and you can look at it. You can also find my business on Facebook, and I have a link tree also. I'll put the link tree up if people want to see it, so you can,
I have link tree too. I love that thing.
Yeah, I do too. I'll put it here in the. There we go. Put it there in the notes for everybody to look at.
Thank you. Okay. And yes, we'll follow you on YouTube too.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a number of short videos out there. When I put videos out there, I try to make them easy to understand. So I don't like talking at people and just having people go, I have no clue what he was talking about. Like that part bugs me.
Right. I can understand that.
Oh, you can't see the link, Suzanne? Hold on. Let me try it again. Here we go.
It posted to your YouTube.
Yep, and it just posted
to
my Facebook.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. Yep, that's because I only posted it to the one like a moron.
You're good.
Yep.
Yes, we'll definitely all have to watch the replay. Why don't we do a rerun in a couple of weeks so we can brush back up?
Yeah, definitely.
That's you, right?
Yep, that's me.
Just subscribed.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
And I do all of my services online, folks. Tarot readings and astrology charts. I do them all online. So if you can't get to me here in Northern Virginia, although it is lovely, it is getting a little hot, but if you can't, I always do stuff via Zoom, and I have clients pretty much in every time zone. So we'll make it work.
Wonderful.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention and listening to me for nearly 2 hours. That I know it's a lot.
We always appreciate it. We're so ready to learn. So, hi, Jay. Love you, honey. We're getting ready to do our send-off now. Angela, would you like to take it away?
Yes. All right, everybody. Remember, you are sovereign. You are divine. So stand in your power and let your fucking light shine. We love you all, and we'll see you next time. See you next time, guys. Love you.
Guys.
Thank you, John. Have a good vacation.